Black waitress fired for helping Keanu Reeves. What happens next will shock you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. It was a chilly November evening in 2014 at a small diner on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Amelia Carter, a 27-year-old waitress known for her radiant smile and impeccable service, had no idea her life was about to change forever. That night, she was rushing from table to table, juggling orders with her usual grace, when he walked in, Keanu Reeves. Amelia didn't recognize him at first. He was dressed in a plain black hoodie and jeans, his face partially hidden by a baseball cap. The diner was buzzing with its usual crowd, truck drivers, families, and a few teenagers grabbing milkshakes. Keanu quietly took a seat at a corner booth, away from the spotlight. Amelia approached him with her notepad, and when he lifted his head to order, her heart skipped a beat. She froze. "Are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He gave her a small, shy smile and nodded. "Yeah, but just Keanu tonight. What's good here?" Her professionalism kicked in. She recommended the diner's famous chicken pot pie, and they exchanged a few light-hearted words before she left to get his order. The entire time, she felt the eyes of her coworkers and some customers darting toward his table, whispering and speculating. Amelia couldn't help but feel protective. As the night progressed, Keanu stayed longer than most, enjoying the solitude and warm ambience. He didn't act like a celebrity. He acted like a regular guy. When he quietly paid his bill, he left a $500 tip and a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for being so kind. You made my night better." But things took a dramatic turn when her boss, Jerry, noticed Keanu leaving. Jerry, a loud, money-driven man in his 50s, stormed over to Amelia. "You knew who that was, didn't you?" he accused. "Yes, but I treated him like any other customer," she replied, confused. Jerry scoffed. "You should have told me. We could have gotten photos, publicity. You wasted an opportunity for this diner." Amelia was stunned. He came here for peace, not to be exploited. But Jerry didn't care. In front of the entire staff, he fired her on the spot, accusing her of not thinking about the diner's best interests. The room fell silent. Amelia stood there, humiliated, clutching the note Keanu had left her. The news of her firing spread quickly through the small town and somehow reached the ears of Keanu himself. The following week, as Amelia sat in her tiny apartment, scrolling through job listings, she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, her jaw dropped. Standing there was Keanu Reeves, holding a bouquet of flowers and a determined look in his eyes. "I heard what happened," he said softly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to process the moment. "You didn't have to come," he shrugged. "I couldn't stand by and do nothing." What happened next would change Amelia's life forever. Keanu's words lingered in the air, their weight both comforting and surreal. Amelia, still clutching the note he had left her at the diner, felt an avalanche of emotions: shock, gratitude, and a deep sense of vulnerability. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to cry, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "I don't understand. Why would you come back? I'm just me." Keanu stepped inside, closing the door gently behind him. "No one's just anything," he replied, his voice calm and steady. "You stood up for me when you didn't have to. You treated me like a person when so many others wouldn't. That's rare, Amelia. And now it's my turn to stand up for you." Amelia wiped her tears hastily, embarrassed. "I lost my job. My rent's due next week. I don't even know what I'm going to do. And now you're here. Why would someone like you care about someone like me?" Keanu's face softened. He sat down at the small, worn kitchen table and gestured for her to join him. "Because I know what it feels like to lose everything," he began, his voice carrying a quiet pain. "I know what it's like to feel invisible, to be knocked down by life over and over again. You didn't deserve what happened to you, Amelia. None of this is fair." His words cracked something open inside her. "You don't even know me. she murmured, though her voice lacked conviction. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his dark eyes meeting hers. Maybe not yet. But I'd like to. The silence between them was electric, filled with unspoken words and emotions neither could fully understand. Amelia finally sat across from him, her hands trembling as she placed the note on the table. This meant more to me than you'll ever know, she admitted, her voice breaking. Not because of who you are, but because I felt seen for the first time in years. Keanu leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. You deserve to be seen, Amelia. You deserve so much more than this. What he did next would change her life in ways she couldn't have imagined. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Sliding it across the table, he said, I know it's not a solution, but I want you to have this. Amelia hesitated before opening it. Inside was a check, more money than she'd seen in her entire life. Her hands flew to her mouth as she gasped. I can't take this. Yes, you can, Keanu said firmly but kindly. Consider it a stepping stone, a way to get back on your feet. You didn't deserve what happened at that diner, and I want to help make it right. Amelia shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. And in that moment she realized that kindness, even in the smallest acts, could ripple out in unimaginable ways. But why? Why are you doing this? Keanu hesitated for a moment before speaking, his voice quieter now. Because you reminded me of someone I lost a long time ago. She had the same fire, the same kindness. And if I couldn't save her, maybe I can help you. The weight of his confession hung heavy between them. Amelia wanted to ask more, but the raw vulnerability in his eyes stopped her. Instead, she reached across the table and took his hand, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for everything. As the night wore on, they talked for hours. Keanu shared pieces of his past he rarely spoke about, and Amelia found herself opening up in ways she never had before. There was a connection between them, fragile yet undeniable, like two broken pieces finding solace in each other's cracks. But life, as it often does, had more twists in store for them. The next morning, a photographer's lens captured Keanu leaving Amelia's apartment. By afternoon, the tabloids were ablaze with headlines like, Keanu's mystery woman, new romance or secret hero? The quiet bond they had started to build was suddenly thrust into the glaring light of public scrutiny. Amelia's phone buzzed non-stop with calls and messages, while reporters swarmed her apartment. She felt overwhelmed, exposed, and terrified. I didn't ask for this, she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. And then, as if sensing her fear, Keanu called. I'm on my way, he said simply, his voice steady. When he arrived, the chaos outside her apartment didn't faze him. He took her hand, looked her in the eyes, and said, You're not alone in this. We'll face it together. Amelia wanted to believe him, but the road ahead felt impossibly uncertain. Little did they know, their story was only just beginning. Keanu's hand was warm, steady, and reassuring, but Amelia's heart pounded with fear. The crowd of reporters outside her apartment had tripled, their voices clashing in a chaotic symphony of questions and camera shutters. She glanced at Keanu, searching his face for answers she couldn't seem to find within herself. I didn't ask for this attention, she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. I just wanted my quiet life back. Now everything feels like it's spinning out of control. Keanu's grip on her hand tightened ever so slightly. I know it feels overwhelming, Amelia. But I won't let them tear you apart. Not after everything you've been through. His words carried a promise, one she desperately wanted to believe. Yet the doubts in her mind wouldn't relent. How could someone like him, someone whose life was constantly dissected by the world, understand the fear of losing anonymity, the safety of a quiet existence? I can't be part of your world, she said softly, her eyes welling up with tears. I'm not strong enough for this. I'm not anyone. Keanu frowned, his brow furrowing with an intensity she hadn't seen before. Don't ever say that, he said, his voice firm but kind. You are everything. You're brave, you're kind, and you stood up for me when you had nothing to gain. That kind of strength. It's rare. Don't let anyone, including yourself, make you think you're less than extraordinary. The sincerity in his voice made her chest ache. She didn't know whether to cry harder or try to believe him. Before she could speak, the sound of raised voices from outside shattered the moment. We need to get out of here, Keanu said decisively, pulling her toward the back door of her apartment. Where would we even go? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. To a place where no one can find us, he replied. Just trust me. Against her better judgment, she did. She followed him out the back entrance and into a waiting car with tinted windows. As they drove away, Amelia stared out at the city, her thoughts swirling in a whirlwind of fear, disbelief, and something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. The car ride was silent, save for the hum of the engine. Keanu sat beside her, his calm presence a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods. The air was crisp and quiet, the kind of stillness that felt like a balm to her frayed nerves. This is where I come when I need to escape, Keanu explained, opening the door for her. It's not much, but it's safe. Amelia stepped inside, the warmth of the cabin wrapping around her like a protective cocoon. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of relief. But it was short-lived. As the hours turned into days, the world outside didn't forget about her. The tabloids continued to speculate about her relationship with Keanu, painting her as everything from a gold digger to a secret lover. The pressure began to mount, and Amelia started to question if she had made the right choice by staying with him. I'm ruining your life, she said one evening, her voice heavy with guilt. I should have just disappeared. Keanu turned to her, his expression a mix of frustration and tenderness. You think you're ruining my life? Amelia, you saved mine. Don't you see that? You reminded me that there are still good people in this world. People worth fighting for. For a moment, Amelia shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm not strong like you, Keanu. I don't know how to handle all of this. You don't have to be strong all the time, he said gently, stepping closer. That's what I'm here for. We'll face it together, one step at a time. But deep down, Amelia knew their lives were too different. She couldn't escape the nagging thought that she was holding him back, that he deserved someone who could handle the scrutiny, the chaos, and the spotlight. One night, as Keanu slept soundly beside her, she sat by the window, staring out at the moonlit forest. Her heart ached with the weight of an impossible choice. Could she stay and fight for what they had, or would walking away be the only way to truly protect him? The answer wasn't clear. As the sun began to rise, Amelia realized their story was far from over. As the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, she sat frozen by the window, her heart caught in a battle between love and fear. The soft glow of dawn illuminated the quiet cabin. She turned to see Keanu still sleeping, his face peaceful and unburdened, so different from the world they had left behind. Her chest tightened. She knew deep down that staying meant dragging him into the storm that seemed to follow her every step, the headlines, the accusations, the judgment. It wasn't just her fight anymore, it was his too, and that knowledge crushed her. She reached for the notepad on the small wooden table by the window, her trembling hands gripping the pen. Words felt like jagged glass cutting her as she wrote. Keanu, you've given me more than I could ever ask for. Your kindness, your strength, your belief in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. You made me feel seen for the first time in my life. But this isn't your burden to bear. I can't let you sacrifice your peace for someone like me. You deserve someone who can walk beside you, not someone who pulls you into the shadows. I love you too much to let you drown in my storm. I'm sorry. Please don't look for me. Amelia. By the time Keanu stirred, Amelia was gone. The cabin felt eerily empty, the absence of her presence like a hollow ache. He called her name, his voice echoing in the stillness, but there was no answer. That was when he saw the note. Her handwriting trembled across the page like her unsteady heart. He read it once, then again, his hands gripping the edges of the paper as if holding it tighter would somehow bring her back. His chest heaved as the reality sank in. She was gone, not because she didn't love him, but because she did. Keanu sat down on the edge of the bed, the weight of her absence pressing on him like unbearable grief. He thought of the way her laughter filled the room, how her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams, how she had become the one person who reminded him what it felt like to truly live. And now she was gone. Amelia, meanwhile, walked aimlessly through the city, her heart breaking with every step. She clutched the small bag she had packed in silence, her mind replaying every moment they had shared. She wanted to run back to him, to take it all back, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was protecting him by leaving. Days turned into weeks, and the world moved on. The tabloids found a new scandal to dissect, the reporters faded, and the noise of it all finally quieted. But for Keanu, the silence was deafening. Every place he went reminded him of her, the way she smiled at the little things, the warmth she brought into his world. One night, as he sat alone in the cabin staring at the note she had left, he whispered into the emptiness. "You think you saved me, but you're the one I can't save." Amelia, too, was haunted by his memory. She found a small job in a diner far from the city, blending into the background of a new life. But no matter how hard she tried to move on, her heart remained tethered to him. She would see his face in her dreams, hear his voice in the quiet moments, and feel the ache of his absence in her every breath. Months passed, and the seasons changed, but the pain didn't fade. Amelia often wondered if she had made a mistake, if walking away from him had been the wrong choice. But she told herself it was for the best. One rainy evening, she sat by the window of her tiny apartment, watching the raindrops streak down the glass. Her fingers brushed over a photograph she had kept hidden, a picture of her and Keanu taken in a rare moment of joy. Her tears fell freely, the weight of her loneliness pressing down on her like a heavy fog. And somewhere in that same moment, Keanu stood on a movie set, surrounded by people yet utterly alone. He stared at his phone, scrolling through pictures of them together, unable to delete a single one. Despite the distance, despite the time, they both felt the same unrelenting ache, the kind of love that doesn't fade no matter how far you run. But life had pulled them apart, leaving them to wonder if they'd ever find their way back to each other. Sometimes, love isn't enough to conquer the storms of life. And sometimes, the greatest heartbreak comes not from losing someone, but from choosing to let them go. And so they remained apart, two souls forever marked by a love that was as beautiful as it was fleeting, a love they might never find again.